Hey, live from the Xfinity Mobile Studio. This is a special Sunday night edition of the PHLY Eagles podcast presented by Ashley and Bet365. I'm Bo Wulf. That's EJ Smith. We are at the same hotel, separated by a few walls. EJ made sure to tell the woman not to put us side by side. Who knows what his plans are? We've talked to Howie Roseman. He spoke, and who else is hustling to give you a live podcast to break it all down? But the people at PHLY. We're in Phoenix. EJ, how are you?
I'm doing great. Always a good day when you can hear from Howie Roseman in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. I just want to set the record straight very quickly. I just thought it would have been bad for the podcast if we were like wall to wall. I'm not up to anything nefarious.
The woman, listen, we got here. They didn't have our rooms ready. It was a whole thing. Listen, we are not staying at the Biltmore, okay? I'm telling you that. And we got there finally. There were rooms ready. She's like, oh, would you like me to put you guys next to each other? And EJ right away, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
That is an understatement.
And then afterwards, she's like, well, those walls are paper thin. And it's like, okay, EJ, good for you.
No, it's not that. It's definitely not that. My wife is not here, so I am not up to anything weird. Just, like I said, trying to make sure that we give the listeners the best audio experience possible. That's all.
And it's good because here, we are speaking quite loudly, but it's not like the other people in the hotel are sleeping just yet. So that's good. We can get to it. Now, Howie Roseman spoke about a lot of things. I have 25 answers down written here. That's how many questions he answered. A lot of them about A.J. Brown, and a lot of them had a similar answer. We will get to that. We will get to the news of a new addition to the Eagles. The Eagles adding a former second-round pick to the edge group. Talk about that. We'll talk about what he said about Jake Eliott, Riq Woolen, the lack of turnover on the offensive side of the ball. All these different things. We're going to go through it, but let's start with A.J. Brown. EJ on A.J., what did he say?
A.J. Brown is a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. What more do you want from me? That's what he said, right? He was asked several questions about A.J. Brown, about how his future affects the roster construction overall. Kind of the nature of what's been what have the conversations been about A.J. Brown over the last few months, and he acknowledged that this is going to be a conversation that's had throughout the league, especially this week as all the teams converge here in Phoenix, Arizona. But he said, unfortunately, I don't live under a rock. So Howie Roseman is aware of how much discourse there's been around A.J. Brown. But the answer to all those questions, A.J. Brown is a member of the Eagles. That is the only thing he had to say today about A.J. Brown.
It was a little bit different. And I found it just a touch surprising because he could have said the same stuff he said in the spring or the winter. He could have said, as I said before, we are not in the business of getting rid of great players. A.J. Brown is a great player, and we are excited to have him on the team. Instead, it was much more boilerplate. AJ's a member of the team. And it wasn't necessarily, he was even asked about the report about AJ giving a list of 4 teams. And his answer then was kind of, the ball is not necessarily in our hands, it's not in our court. And it was less projection of strength than I'm used to from Howie on this front. Now, we should also say this was, this press conference happened right after the crazy Duke ending, and Howie's son goes to Duke. He was rooting for Duke. This is a bit of a come down. He admitted that, his energy
was deflating a little bit.
So that could have been a part of it. We are all we are doing is parsing his answers. But I was a little bit surprised about the general tenor of the way that he was answering the AJ questions. And maybe that is a way for him to communicate with AJ Brown. Maybe it is a way for him to communicate with other teams in the league. He was asked about the Elijah Moore connection, and he said, we don't make roster moves to do favors for other people on the roster. So, he tried to downplay that. I was a little bit surprised at the way that he approached the AJ thing.
Yeah, I thought there would have been some messaging behind what he said. I agree with you there. And I think, the nature of, and, for the listeners, I think it's good for us to kind of explain why we parse these things, because a lot of times Howie Roseman does have a message that he wants to convey to somebody, whether it's the player, whether it's the other teams that may be interested in a trade conversation. And I think my read on this is that he didn't really have a message that he wanted out there. And I think you can speculate as to what the reason is, but I definitely think your reading is correct that, this isn't necessarily like operating from a position of strength. This wasn't AJ Brown is staying. AJ Brown is a member of this team. He's a big part of our future. And there wasn't anything like that. And there also wasn't anything, like the last time we heard from him when it was like, we take calls on every player. We have to do what's best for the team. It was as close to a no comment as you really get from Howie Roseman. And he really doesn't offer a lot of like no comments very often. Even when, even when he does, have a no comment, there's usually a tail to it. And I thought that was a rare case where he didn't have one. So no, I think it's a good observation by you.
Yeah. And I thought maybe there would be acknowledgement that there were offers from around the league. I thought it was going to be something like, listen, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that people didn't call about AJ Brown, but nobody values him as much as we did, and as much as we do, and we're excited to have him. He's not going to get into that stuff. I did think listen, I get there's interest. I turn on the TV, everybody's talking about AJ Brown, like as if it's made up out of thin air.
Yeah.
That's okay. But I thought it was just a touch surprising on the AJ front. And he was also asked about, he got all this cap space. Is this move holding things up? How do you approach the roster building while not exactly knowing if he's going to be on the roster? And his answer was something along the lines of, EJ, the vision of the roster is greater than one person.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. One player does not, alter the vision of the roster. I would call him out a little bit there. I do think a player with as much of an impact on not only the field and in terms of like how you build your team, but also obviously the salary cap. I do think one player can have a big impact on a lot of those other decisions. So I do think that it's, a major decision that's going to influence how they build the team. But yeah, I did find it interesting that he did mention that, one player doesn't, alter roster construction all that much.
All right. I think we got the AJ stuff out of the way. I don't think we're going to be getting anything new on that front anytime soon here.
Let me just add one funny thing there, though. Like there was definitely some intrigue from other reporters, from other markets about what Howie had to say about AJ.
We can talk about this. I think we can talk about.
I think it's fair. Yeah, I mean it's not besmirching anybody, but
the way this works, okay. The gaggle of Eagles reporters. This interview is done to sort of mollify and make it good for the Philadelphia reporters who have come out. No video. Okay, this is just for the people who are there. And then about midway through, you had better eyes on this than I did.
I did, yeah.
About midway through,
yeah,
a New England-based reporter starts trying to sidle into the conversation and
kind of hanging around the perimeter,
waiting to just pull a quote to be able to tweet out something like that. How did you feel about that? How do you feel about the journalism ethics of that, and not even the ethics, but the manners of it?
I think the reporter conducted themselves perfectly fine. I understand the hustle. You can respect a reporter trying to get to the bottom of a story. If that reporter had like blasted out a bunch of quotes from Howie during that, put them all over social media, went live, did an emergency pod before we got a chance to, I would have had an issue with some of that. But I think they were just doing their due diligence, and I can respect that. I can understand that.
I think it's because I could go both ways here, because it would have been worse if that person was then trying to get a question in.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this is for the Eagles people. But it is almost worse to be kind of sneaky about it and not make your presence known and try to, I don't know. I think he was doing his job.
Yeah,
but I also think it was probably fair of the Eagles PR staff to then be like, hey, this is not for you.
Yeah, I think it was. I think they handled it perfectly fine. Yeah, they were respectful. Yeah, I think it was fine. I respect
all's fair at the Biltmore.
I don't know about that. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves here.
All right, let's push AJ to the side, and for the rest of this show, we'll just go back and forth with our takeaways. I have one if you want me to start.
Yeah, go ahead.
To me, what was interesting, and I wish we could get the actual TikTok of this stuff, but the way that free agency played out, obviously we know the Eagles wanted to bring back Jalen Phillips, and if they had been able to do that, that would have been their big signing. That would have they would not have signed Riq Woolen, obviously, and how he acknowledged that this is the the downside of the gamble that you make when you don't extend guys in season, which they are committed to not doing. And once Phillips goes to the market, unfortunately, he understands why he signed the deal that he did. And then he said it's all about you can have plans, but it's all about being able to be flexible and pivoting. And so my read on that is I do not think that, Riq Woolen was their plan B for free agency if Jaelan Phillips didn't come back. I think this was much more of a wait and see as they canvass the market. Corners are going for, big money deals. This is what Riq Woolen is available for. We understand that he is a flawed player who has enormous upside, and we have knowledge about him from Clint Hurt. And this is a one-year deal. This makes a lot of sense for us. I think that this was a story of the Eagles staying on their toes and not necessarily, the best laid plans of Mice and Roseman.
Yeah, no, I can. Nice creativity there. I appreciate it. But yeah, I agree with you. I asked Howie about the resource allocation to switch it, a high profile, relatively high price player into the cornerback spot opposite Quinyon Mitchell, significantly more investment that they had last year. And you've seen the ripple effects at safety. And when answering that question and then answering another question specifically about Riq Woolen and what they saw in him in free agency, I thought it was clear that they saw a market opportunity. They saw a player that they valued highly, that they saw didn't get a long-term contract as other quarterbacks across the league got multi-year contracts, lucrative contracts at that. And yeah, I thought it was interesting that Howie kind of painted the complete picture for Riq Woolen, acknowledging the fact that, he hasn't been as consistent as maybe he needed to be to earn that big contract, and that, they're sort of, I don't want to say buying low on Riq Woolen, but I think that is kind of the notion there, which is that, they will be, they feel confident that the deal that they signed him to is going to look like a bargain because he can still play his best football and be more consistent. He mentioned Clint Hurt, the fact that Clint Hurt had, a crossover with Riq Woolen. And yeah, I agree with you. It was pretty clear with how he described it, that it was more of a finding a player that you felt like the rest of the league didn't value as highly as they did, rather than, going into free agency saying, we're going to find a lockdown corner to put next to, Quinyon Mitchell. We're going to prioritize that position. I do think it was more of a value play.
Exactly. I think this was not, okay, we want to make sure that we have a better cornerback too. The big problem we want to upgrade this offseason is better than Adoree Jackson, and we want to pair somebody good with Quinyon. It was much more, this is the best thing available. It makes sense for us. Let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah, but then there are ripple effects at safety, which was going to be my takeaway. I don't know if do you have anything else on the Riq Woolen pivot?
No, but it is connected to the safety thing, so I will let you go ahead.
Yeah, so I found it very noteworthy. Howie Roseman said that they are not done adding at the safety position, and really wasn't as effusive about, the guys they had in the room as I kind of expected him to be. I think we'll get that from Nick tomorrow, for the record. I think Nick will say, ton of confidence in Marcus Epps, ton of confidence in Michael Carter, feel great about those guys. We could play a game with those guys. I think Howie, saying like, because we don't have the direct quote in front of us because, we got to get to the pot as quickly as we can. We're not transcribing over here. But the sentiment was they still have work to do at that position. It's March 29th. They don't play a game next week. And that there is there's work left to do there. So that jumped out to me a little bit. I think that does speak to the fact that I think you'll see at least one other contender in that starting competition by the time that we get to training camp. And I'll be honest, with him saying that, I don't read that as like, oh yeah, he could add a safety on day 3 of the draft and wipe his hands and say, all right, like we added to the position. They have to add to the position, but I think the way that he talked about the outlook there would make me feel like they're going to add another real contender to be a starter in week 1.
That's interesting. I didn't get exactly that sense. Just that he knows that there's still time, and he's done this in the past. And I asked him the question that I didn't ask exactly perfectly, but it was about that, like, was there a philosophical shift from we want our no such thing as a weak link in the secondary, but we want our 5th best player in the secondary to be the corner 2. Now, actually, we want it to be the other safety, which is the way that it looks now. And that's also connected to his answer about Reed Blankenship, which was that when you look back at the end of free agency, there are deals that you're like, you know what, that was a pretty good deal. Maybe we could have hopped in on that. And he was talking, he didn't specifically say about Reed, but he was talking about that as if, that was a pretty good deal for Reed. But in the heat of things, you need to keep your options open, and they can't just commit $8 million to Reed, thereby boxing them out of doing something else. Now, in this situation, I think that it's right in the macro. I don't know that this time signing Reed to that deal was going to stop him from doing anything, unless you're thinking of like an AJ trade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the players they signed afterward, like Arnold Ebiketie, Jonathan Jones.
Yeah.
Like, those aren't the types of signings that would preclude you from keeping Reed Blankenship. It's funny.
It could have been something else that they were in on that they didn't end up landing. But
yeah, I mean, it's funny because we did the exercise where it's like, if you go back and sign one player to one contract, if you're Howie Roseman, you go back and you say, we would have signed him for that deal. Based off his answer, it might have been Reed Blankenship. They might have said at that number we could have retained him. So no, it's a good read by you. I don't know. I wasn't expecting him to come out and say like, yeah, we feel like Marcus Epps is our starter, but I do think the way that he answered it. Do you agree with me at the very least? Like him saying like, we are going to add at the position. We have work left to do at that position. They can't just like sign like an undrafted free agent and feel like that checks.
I think you were right that it was less of an endorsement for the Michael Carter Marcus Epps pairing than I was expecting.
Yeah, you know what? Here's how I would say it. Here's how I'd frame it. Like before Howie Roseman spoke, I probably would have put like 30 to 40 turkeys on them trading for a veteran. Maybe I put like 25, 30 turkeys on them trading for a veteran safety, before week one. I'd probably put 35, 40 on it now. I'm more convinced that they will add a veteran, whether it's via trade or somebody at the very end of free agency. Obviously, Justin Simmons is like on the all connected to the Eagles every offseason trade team at this point. But I think that they probably are going to add one more of those types of players. I don't think that answer like lends itself to him going like, oh yeah, like we drafted a guy in the 6th round. Like that's what we needed at that position.
Yeah. Okay. Good one to chew on. All right. Let's take our first break here on the PHLY Eagles show. On the other side, we'll continue telling you the things we heard from Howie Roseman. We've got like 18 answers left to go, including some breaking news about the newest Eagle adding to the Edge group. Stay with us on a late Sunday night.
If you love the NFL Draft, then this is your edge. The Die-Hard NFL Draft Guide is built and based off of thousands of hours of film study, being boots on the ground, Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, Combine, talking to scouts, talking to coaches, really getting a feel for where these players are best going to fit and project in the NFL. We're talking hundreds of players in this class.
There is no comparison. This is the best draft guide for Eagles fans. You get player comps, you get all the data, and you get Fran's insight. And here's the bottom line. There is nobody in the entire world who is better suited to be an NFL draft expert and an Eagles expert than my good friend, Fran Duffy.
All right, so what are you going to find in the guide? Well, you're going to find player comps. You're going to find strengths, weaknesses, physical tools, analytics, highlights, analysis from all across the space, everything you need to try and determine who are the best players for your team. You get access to the guide if you're a diehard, and you'll also get access to a couple of individual breakdowns I'm doing specifically for your team. All right, look, if you want surface level breakdowns, you can get them anywhere. But if you want independent thought, if you want thorough breakdowns on all of these prospects, become a diehard, get the guide. Or you can get access to the 2026 guide for just $26. Let's win draft season.
And I will tell you about our friends at Bet365, and they've got that early pad offer. And I'll tell you what, if you bet on Duke today, you could rest assured that as broken as your heart is, you still got the early pad offer, because if your team goes up by 10 points at any point in the game, Bet365 will pay out your bet right there on the spot. It is that simple. At Bet365, I know the only thing better than winning bets with your money is winning bets with theirs. And there's never been a better time to do that. Thanks to their Bet $10, get $365 promo available to every single new Bet365 user. Bet365, where winning is everything. Download the app today and use code PHLY365 at sign-up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Please gamble responsibly. Must be present in Pennsylvania. $10 minimum deposit required. Bonus bet wager excluded from returns. New customers only. 21 and older. Time limits, minimum odds, and terms and conditions apply. In-app only. Void where prohibited. Bet365, where winning is everything. And we're back on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Bo Wulf and EJ Smith, just minutes after we've talked to Howie Roseman at the Biltmore. I got to give you credit here, EJ. You know, it's not the most posh setup we have. And we were trying to figure out the best lighting situation. And you came up with just a pro move to turn off the light behind you and angle the lamp here off the white wall. And
off the heezy. Yeah, that's what the kids would call off the heezy, right? You know, like got to rebound off.
I didn't play NBA Street. Come on.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate that. Sure.
Easy, come on.
Thank you for selling the reference. Yeah, you know, one thing that everybody will say about me is I'm really into glam. You know, I'm always about the aesthetic, as it's obvious to everyone who watches this show and knows me. So yeah, it's natural. Comes natural to me.
All right. I guess it is up to me now. And why don't we take a minute to talk about the newest Eagle, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Now, longtime listeners will know I loved Joe Tryon back when he was just Joe Tryon in the draft.
You know him back when, yeah.
Would I like to try him on? You bet. Now, has had an underwhelming career. Played better early in his career with the Bucks. Last year was cast off was signed a free agent deal with the Browns. Was cut, goes to the Bears. Didn't have any sacks last season. We looked a lot at him last year when he was entering free agency, and I was expecting that he was going to be a guy who would fit. And I was a little bit underwhelmed. I ended up falling for Anthony Nelson instead, that people will remember. But this is a very Howie move. Second round pedigree, has some good ball in his past.
First round pedigree, 32nd overall pick.
32nd overall. I apologize. 32nd overall. Was it the year where there wasn't a first round pick?
You know what? It might have been a year where, who lost their pick? Was it the Dolphins?
I think it was
someone got their pick taken away from them. So, yeah, maybe Pro Football Reference is being a little generous with the 32nd overall pick that year.
Well, it is 32nd overall, but was it the first round or the second round?
Pro Football Reference has it as a first round pick.
Well, then I guess it was the first round pick. Yeah, it makes sense. No guarantees. I would say more likely than not, he doesn't even make the team, but somebody else to add to that group. And Howie was asked about, the disappointment of not bringing Jalen Phillips back. He says, we like to have numbers there. We like to have waves. He wasn't even actually too effusive in his praise of Arnold Ebiketie, right? As in, he still needs to earn a role. There are no guarantees for him, despite the fact that he signs for $6.5 million. So just continuing to throw bodies at that group, I think there is probably still work to be done there as well.
Yeah, I think there's at least one move left to be made there. The Jonathan Gennard type of player. I know we've talked a lot about him. But yeah, I thought that Tryon-Shoyinka was at least an interesting addition. Again, because I thought him talking about waves, obviously he's talked a lot about depth at edge rusher over the years. It's a clear priority for the team, but it is kind of like that push-pull with Vic Fangio, where it's clear that Vic feels like you can go into a game with 3 edge rushers and be fine. But, if you don't have like a clear number one, maybe this is them trying to like kind of meet in the middle with Vic to make sure you have like 4 or 5 guys that you feel good about in a rotation. So I think he makes sense for that, right? Or for that reason. But I agree with you. I was expecting a little bit more on Arnold Ebiketie. I thought they might be a little bit more bullish on him.
Yeah, he mentioned that 2 years ago it was more of a Vic style defense for the Falcons, and so they were able to see that on tape. But yeah, it was not over the top on Ebiketie. So there you go. All right, over to you.
All right, I am going to go with toward the end of the press conference here. So Howie was asked about the offense and the fact that they're probably not going to have very many new starters on offense, which is something. As they've gone through free agency, they brought Dallas Goedert back, which, I don't think anybody's complaining about, but, the Landon, Dickerson, and Lane Johnson are returning. And all of a sudden you look at their offense and it's like they're running it back with a group that struggled last year. Obviously the coaching staff has a significant turnover. And my read on his answer was that, he basically pointed to the fact that it's the same group that won a Super Bowl 2 years ago. So it's not that they're running it back. I think he mentioned that, they were 20th in points scored last year. He said,
20th. What's that? Yeah, he had that at the tip of his tongue.
Yeah. But then he sort of said, like, well, it's not that we're running it back with the group that was 20th. We're running it back with the team that won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, which is a little convenient framing. And, you know, the thing that stood out to me is that the next question was about lessons he learned from trying to repeat in 2024 relative to how they, you know, had to try and repeat, after 2024, you know, and the lessons they learned trying to repeat after the 2017 season as well. And it jumped out to me because his answer was like a complete 180 from what he talked about moments before, which he says change is a necessity, is a thing that he learned from this last season, and kind of what you have to, you know, what you have to do to really give yourself a chance at repeating. He talked about, you know, the injury attrition and, you know, the just playing a long season, having a truncated off season, those effects being a real thing and what makes it hard to repeat. But he did talk about the importance of change. And I mean, we can talk about the change on the coaching staff, but from a personnel standpoint, I don't see a lot of avenues for them to have significant change on offense.
I think that's right. And we've talked about it. Now, I think they will still try to find ways. And part of it is just about increasing the depth. He talked about this in the additions of Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore, just that, you know, you look around the league, and this is actually a place that we have not done a good enough job at the past couple of years, is having depth at the bottom of the wide receiver roster. I think they will probably try to do that, especially on the offensive line. But there's no doubt that they are still betting that the most immediate improvements on offense are going to come as a result of the coaching staff changes.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's an understandable bet to make. It's one that most Eagles fans will understand. I mean, they have a talented group on offense, and I think that's what Howie Roseman's pointing to. And he says this is a group that won a Super Bowl. It's like, you look around, it's like Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and Jalen Hurts, obviously, as well. It's like, you could see why they are betting on this group. The fact that they signed all those players to such long-term extensions kind of made this decision for them. You know, and I know when they did that, everyone was like, man, they're locking up this talented offense. It's so smart that they're doing it. So, you know, there can be some revisionist history. But, yeah, I do think it's going to be interesting to see how much change they can really have from a personnel standpoint. I mean, you draft a first-round receiver, or you add Kenyon Sadiq into the fold, and all of a sudden it does look different. But, yeah, I think as it sits right now, it is running it back. Whether Howie Roseman will say it or not, it's running it back with the team that was 20th in points scored last year.
All right, I'm going to give you my next takeaway.
Okay.
Ready? And that is that I am less convinced now that the Andy Dalton trade
this is a good one.
has an obvious effect on Tanner McKee. And this is in part because Howie was very effusive about this. Now, he would say that either way, but more about some news that came to light at the Biltmore, which is that the amount of the money that the Eagles are paying Andy Dalton is not the $4 million that has been reported. The Panthers covered most of that. The Eagles will only be paying Dalton about $1.5 million, which for a veteran third-string quarterback, you know, it's only a little bit over the veteran minimum. Makes a lot more sense and makes you more willing to believe that they're going to carry all three of these guys into the season. Now, I do think that this is still something where the presence of Dalton allows them to be bowled over by an offer for Tanner McKee. If, say, somebody's starter tears an ACL in the summer and, you know, someone's offering a real significantly a second-round pick or something like that, they can now say yes to that. But I do think the plan is to carry all three guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, when it came down and the number was first reported, your first instinct was to wonder what the compensation, you know, see, the fact that they were paying that much kind of felt like that's too much to pay for a third quarterback. So this clears that up. Again, it's good context to add from Phoenix here that it's not quite the number that we first expected. And as a result, yeah, I think your framing is right. I think it's it gives them flexibility. I think it does, like, no matter what they say, I do think adding Andy Dalton increases the likelihood that they will trade Tanner McKee this offseason. I would have said, but we would have thought it was likely even before they made this move. It gives them the flexibility to do so. The fact that they were able to kind of keep that salary slot down also definitely makes a lot of sense. It's something that, affords them even more flexibility. But yeah, I mean, I still think, I don't know how many turkeys I'd put on it, but I still think Tanner McKee very well could be, you know, playing somewhere else and starting week one for another team.
Okay. let's give you one more takeaway before we go to our next break, EJ.
I'll give you a quick one since I know that we're up against the break, and there's some I want to chew on a little bit more. But a quick one for you is that when he mentioned the lack of receiver depth they've had, and he was talking about Hollywood Brown, and he was talking about Elijah Moore, he mentioned that he felt like not only they were lacking in like the depth, behind Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, but also they were lacking that vertical element, and that's something that was like music to my ears because I've talked a lot about on the show, like those receivers behind AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. You want those guys to be vertical threats. You want those guys to be the type of player that the opposing defense has to account for, even if they are not high volume players, just because of the nature of they can, make a big play with very limited opportunity. And I remember Fran talking about Hollywood Brown, especially being like somebody that could be valuable in the horizontal stretch game on jet sweeps and kind of like as a gadget player as well. So I thought it was noteworthy that Howie mentioned him as a vertical threat. I think it's obvious, like if you just look at the player profile, that they would be a vertical threat. But with Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore, they haven't quite actually been vertical threats in their career. Their yards per catch are a little bit lower than you would expect for the types of players they are. I thought, honestly, if you're an Eagles fan, I feel like it is a little reassuring to hear that Howie Roseman looks at those guys as field stretchers rather than like forced touches, jet sweeps, end arounds. Like you want them to actually be, kind of what they look like on paper rather than what they've been in their previous stops.
Yeah, but I think that's unlikely. I mean, they've both been several places. They've had the same talent the whole time. They're only getting older. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to be, budget Deshaun Jackson.
No, I don't. So I think it's more encouraging that is like a profile that they've clearly picked out. And I mean, if you really want this, you're probably hoping they do it. They add it in the draft as well. But I think it was more like, and we'll hear from Nick tomorrow about this as well, about what his vision is for those guys. I think you want the vision to be field stretcher, vertical threat. I'm not saying like, oh man, they're going to be using these guys. They're going to be throwing go balls to these guys. No, like one of them will almost certainly not make the team. But I think like that profile being something that is front of mind for Howie Roseman, I do think is important, especially as we try to figure out what Sean Mannion's offense is going to look like.
Gotcha. All right. Let's head to our second break here on the PHLY Eagles podcast, a Sunday primetime edition. Post Howie Roseman. Stay with us. Much more to come. All right. Let me tell you about our friends at TrueMark, because with a TrueMark financial home equity line of credit, you can tap into your home's equity to handle renovations, upgrades, or whatever is next on your list. A TrueMark Financial HELOC Select gives you the flexibility to borrow when you need it on your timeline. You start with a revolving line of credit, use only what you need, and when you're ready, you can lock in all or part of your balance at a fixed rate for predictable payments. You only pay interest on what you use, and as you pay it back, that credit becomes available again. No reapplying, no extra steps. And with competitive rates compared to most unsecured loans and flexible repayment options, this could be a smart move for your home and your wallet. Learn more about TrueMark Financial's home equity line of credit at TrueMark.com or stop by one of their 24 branch locations to get started. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender at MLS 404938. That's TrueMark.com, TrueMark.com. And I'll tell you about our friends at Xfinity, because the more things change, the more you want certainty. And that's where Xfinity's 5-year price guarantee comes into play. What if you could have reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi, and what if you could keep it at the same price for 5 years? That's the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. Imagine Wi-Fi that makes everything in your home work together, that finds and fixes problems before you even notice them. Super intelligent Wi-Fi with a sixth sense that lets you stream the game even when the whole family is online. And here's the best part. No annual contracts, no hidden fees, and Xfinity's best equipment included. Take it from me. A lot can change in 5 years. Championships are won, records are broken, dreams grow bigger, but your Wi-Fi, it should stay reliable, and the price should stay put. So lock in your price and unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions apply. Back to the PHLY Eagles podcast. Bo Wulf and EJ Smith. EJ, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It was an easy travel day.
For you.
I feel like it was for you too. I mean, the rental car situation doesn't count. The flight was
What
easy.
do you mean? That's part of the travel.
Okay. I apologize.
I was the rental car situation took about as long as the flight from Philadelphia to Phoenix.
Okay. Well, yes, for me it was an easy travel day because I've got a great podcast co-host. He waited for me at the airport, drove me to the hotel, and yeah, I mean,
only to be rebuffed at staying next to you in the hotel room.
I don't know why you wanted to stay next to me so badly. Like, what is sharing a wall? What does that even mean?
Rental car situation. Now, I don't know. Those of you who have been to the Phoenix Airport rental car center, you got to take the tram over to the big place. Fine, easy tram, and I'm thinking, oh, this it's not bad. I've been there before, and I get on the line, and you know what? I am not afraid to name names here. Thrifty, more like Shifty. Okay?
Oh, I like that.
We get. I mean, you can tell the line is already like out the door, and you can tell that everybody in this line is already having the worst day of their life. There's like 2 people working. There, you can try to do the thing where it's like, okay, you put in, you do the QR code, you put in your information, you do all your selections, you take a picture of your ID, and then you'd be able to just go straight to the car. Everybody on the line is trying to do that, and everybody on the line is like getting to the final stage, and then it's like, oh no, you actually have to go to the counter. I mean, I'm in this line for like 40 minutes, and eventually I just bail, cancel that bad boy. Try to walk around to see which line is the shortest. Go to a different competing place. Get a deal. You know what I did, EJ. You know what I did. You do the mystery car. Yeah, get a great deal. Could be anything. Could be anything. We got a great like electric SUV. Electric for a 48-hour rental car means I don't have to pay for the gas. Fantastic. Super cheap. But even that took forever. Oh man, I almost had to pay rent in that rental car set.
But like, just look at the bright side. You got to ride to the hotel with me. You didn't have to go back and forth. You didn't have to do all this extra work. Mm-hmm. It worked out great.
Plus, I feel like I made a good play. I was able to feel like I made a good play by bailing on Thrifty.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like you navigated this in a way that is really a testament to your decision making. Mm-hmm. I would not have been able to handle that situation well. I would have waffled. I would have called my wife, and I would have done what she told me to do. So hats off to you. It's been a good day. It's been a good day. We don't have to, we don't have to harp on the rental car.
Duke lost. It's been a good day.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great game. Fun. I was thinking about this. Seeing everyone's reaction, at the Biltmore when it happened.
Yeah, 2 Duke fans there. Everybody else was happy to see it. I was thinking about this of like the sports hate teams in my life. Bless you. There are not a lot that still are strong, but Duke is the one that I think I will never let go of. I think it, like, barring a child of mine playing for the actual basketball team, I think I will always forever be thrilled whenever Duke loses.
So if one of your children plays for the team, you'll give it up? You'll be able to love them?
I think I would have to, of course. But that's not going to happen.
I mean, you don't know.
Well, let's say one of my daughters goes to play for Duke women's basketball. I would still hate Duke men's basketball.
Yeah, that's fair. I can understand that. Honestly, you're a good athlete. I wouldn't rule this out. Like, I think them going to Duke, I might rule out. But yeah. Wouldn't rule it out.
So yeah, I think Duke is my number one.
I don't have a team. I mean, I hate Oklahoma, but like, I don't have a team that like I hate that much. I'm not that passionate about any hatred of a college team in that way. But it was fun seeing everyone's reaction at the Biltmore. Like, it's all of the sports journalists that you guys either see or that you read from across the country, and the whole place just erupts for that final shot there. So it was fun. It was a good experience.
Although, I'll tell you what, even I can feel bad for the kid who made that mistake.
Yeah, it's funny. So I think it was Dave Zangaro kept saying, like, just throw the ball up in the air. It's like, if you're like one of the best athletes in the world, like, you don't like think like that, you don't have the like, let me do this like thing that, we would do on the playground. You know what I mean? Like this kid's like got the confidence that he's going to make the play.
Plus, there was enough. There wasn't like 2 seconds left. They still had, even if you throw the ball out, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably would have been the end of the game. But anyway. All right. Let's get back to Eagles football here. Lindsay in the chat, and Lindsay's texting us saying Lindsay's so anti-UConn, she was actually rooting for Duke.
Was that on the record? Are we sure that was
Lindsay,
that was
you burnt
for publication?
Is
it my turn or your turn?
I think it's technically my turn, but if you have something, you can go ahead.
I'll go. Yeah, I'll do the old snake draft here. You tell me if you agree. True or false? Howie Roseman doesn't think that there are 23 players with first-round grades in this year's draft.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that.
Okay. No, I'm genuinely asking, true or false. I mean, so it was your question. It was a good question about sitting at 23.
It was a good lane. I don't know that I nailed it. I didn't quite land the plane.
No, you did a good job, especially because we hadn't talked about the draft.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to get a draft question. I do think, I called the Eagles media to account for the poor job we did. After the season with Howie Roseman. I thought we bounced back okay today.
Today was a good day. Good questions, good flow to the press conference. There were only 1 or 2 face-offs that got like, I do have like an audible reaction sometimes. So when like 5 people are shouting all at the same time, there was only 1 of those.
It was when everybody was asking about tight end for some reason.
Well, that was good. It showed the
it was a good question, but it was funny that was like that moment. Like 5 people were yelling about tight end.
Yeah. So you asked him about. I mean, why don't I let
generally
you
his thoughts on the draft this year, and because we hadn't asked him about it yet, and obviously it's closing in, and we may not get to talk to Howie again before the draft. Just in general, at 23, do you think you're going to get an impact player? Like, how deep do you think this draft is? And his underscoring message was, he's been in this range of the draft before. And the mistake that you can make entering the draft at this range is thinking you're going to get a specific position, or you can rely on, you're going to get a good player at a couple different spots. And what you have to do at 23, barring moving up, is be willing to draft the best player at a position that you may not have expected. And that's part of the reason that they have worked so hard to draft proof the roster, to make sure that they are able to do that.
Yeah, so I think that is a good summary of his answer. I do think maybe not quite, there's not 23 first-round graded players in this year's draft, but I think it speaks to, like, there are scenarios where they don't have a player with a first-round grade of 23, which is why I think it's at least a fair true or false.
Well, I think there are differences, right? I think they might be pretty convinced they're not going to be able to get like a guy who would be top 20 on their board in a normal year, or top 15 or whatever, like an impact player. But back end of the first round type player, I think maybe there's stuff there.
Sure, and I think the other thing that I took away from it is, they drafted Jahad Campbell. Obviously, they were trying to draft Jahad Campbell around that range last year, and you like looking at the way the board might fall. They might have to go non-premium position at 23 to get a player that they have a first-round grade on. I think at the very least, that was my takeaway. It's not, necessarily a given that they're going to get one of the tackles in that range, because, there might be a run on tackles before they pick. And at that point, maybe it is like, I know I keep using Kenyon Sadiq as the example. Maybe I'd be shocked if they drafted a safety. But, wide receiver or tight end, I could definitely see that if the board falls that way. I think they view wide receiver as enough of a premium position that even that wouldn't really fall into it. But I don't know. I guess tight end and safety are the other two.
Safety is an interesting one, because it does seem like the composition of the draft, there could be a guy there who could be the top guy on their board. But man, I would be really surprised by that.
Yeah, it's risky. You'd have to have like a player that you feel amazing. It's like, I'm not even going to suggest that Caleb Downs would be there, but that's like the type of player you would expect them to go for if they were going to do something like that. But yeah, I mean, I do think my antenna is up a little bit more about who are some of the non-premium position players that could be available at 23. Like if they slid into that range, would the Eagles say, you know what, let's get an impact player rather than trying to force a tackle at that spot?
All right, I'll get my next takeaway. And then I will go to the tight ends because I thought it was interesting that Howie sort of made it known that in the Dallas Goedert negotiations, Dallas Goedert sort of let it be known to the team that he really wanted to be back in Philadelphia. That while this was his first time to truly test the market, the lines of communication were open enough that Dallas was, I don't want to say surrendering leverage necessarily, but he was kind of being open with them about, we've got unfinished business. This is where I want to be. All things equal, I would like to come back. Which I think is kind of what we thought reading between the lines, but it was interesting that Howie sort of said that on the record.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely what I heard going into free agency, that Dallas Goedert was really prioritizing being back with the Eagles. And, when he signed, when we saw the number, I thought for sure that was a big reason why he ended up staying, is because he just prioritized being here. He likes living where he lives. He likes playing for the Eagles, which is a testament to him. Fans should really appreciate that about him. But I agree. The fact that Howie came out and said it really does underscore that was the case. I mean, it is it's a good thing for fans to know that Dallas Goedert wasn't doing what most players justifiably do, which is say I want to say that I want to really reiterate, it's what most players should do. So I'm not criticizing this player at all, but it's the inverse of the Jalen Phillips thing, right? Where it's Jalen Phillips tests the market, gets offered a humongous contract that the Eagles weren't willing to match. Dallas Goedert could have tried to do that. Now, maybe he didn't know, or maybe he didn't think his market would have materialized quite as aggressively, as he had hoped. But I do think it is, a testament to the fact that he wanted to stay with the team. And, again, it explains, I think, the number that he signed for. Yeah.
And then in general, about the tight end room, he was just saying, they're excited about Munt, the idea that
point of attack.
There are so many touch points with him on the roster. But otherwise, I think, he even name-checked E.J. Jenkins and Stone Smart.
He pointed at me while he said E.J. Jenkins.
I noticed that. that.
When he pointed at me, I thought he was going to say Cam Latu. Because, as we know,
he did not mention Cam Latu.
Oh, you don't think I knew? You don't think I noticed that? I looked at you when he didn't mention Cam Latu. But yeah, no, he did. I was very taken aback when he goes, "Yeah, we have E.J. Jenkins." I was like, "What?" So, anyway, Cam Latu erasure is crazy.
All right, it is time for us to go to our final break here on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Back with our final thoughts on the other side. By the way, this channel can be used for multiple streams at once, in case you didn't know. Stay with us. Say about our friends at Rita's, because a sweet mystery is going on at your local Rita's. That's right. For a limited time, you can get Peeps flavored Italian ice, and it comes with a tasty treat. Peeps ice is springtime sweet and deliciously mysterious. Stop by and try it at your local Rita's and try and guess the mystery flavor on the Rita's website, and you can win free Rita's for a year. Just go to ritasIce.com/peeps, and if you guess the right flavor, you'll have a chance to win water ice for a whole year. But you better hurry and get to Rita's to solve this mystery flavor before it's gone. Don't forget to download the Rita's app. New app users will get a free small gelati, ice, or custard with their first purchase. Come on into Rita's and make this season the sweetest one yet with ice, custard, and happiness. Treat yourself to a scoop of happiness today. Be cool. Go to Rita's. And after you go to Rita's, go to Wawa. Because if you've ever had one of those days where you're just moving around nonstop, you're online for the rental car, and you get stuck for 2 hours, and you realize you haven't eaten anything, and you are ravenous. Guess what I could have used? Could have used a Wawa, because Wawa has $5 deals all day, which makes your life easier. If it's the morning, you grab the $5 big breakfast meal deal where you can get a sizzly, a hash brown, and any size hot or iced coffee. That is a full morning win for $5 available from 5 to 11 a.m. If it's later in the day, the value keeps on rolling with a roasted chicken sandwich or a crispy chicken sandwich created your way, starting at $5. And they've even got new teriyaki recipes for a limited time. Real food, real value, and built for busy days. No planning, No overthinking. Just swing in, grab what you need, and keep it moving. Start your day strong and fuel up whenever you need with Wawa's $5 deals. Limited time, exclusion supply. See Wawa.com for details. Gotta have a Wawa. Back on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Bo Wulf and EJ Smith.
Great ad reads. I mean, that's like a power back-to-back ad read right there. Sorry, no, I need to give Rita's and Wawa their flowers. I went to both over the weekend. Now I'm trying to be healthy. You know, the warm weather's coming. You got the t-shirt season back. I'm just trying to be a healthier person. So, but I posted a picture of my Rita's gelati, and I got the small. When the waitress, the cashier, when she asked me, yeah, she's not a waitress. When the cashier asked me if I wanted a smaller or regular, I kind of gave her a disappointed look, and I'm like, the small. I really should be smart about this, but I got roasted. People were like saying in my Instagram messages, like, this cup looks so small in your hand, EJ. Like, what are you doing? Be a man. Get the regular.
That's fine.
Try to be responsible.
Good for you.
I'm trying.
And we should say, we should tell everybody, tomorrow morning, Nick Sirianni will be speaking to the media. We'll be there bright and early, and then we're going to have a show for you at 2 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be live from the PHNX studios. Looking forward to that.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see another sister station studio.
I agree.
Yeah, that 5 times fast. And yeah, the energy out here is going to be great.
Sister Station Studio. Sister Station Studio. Sister Station Studio. Sister Station Studio.
There you go.
Studio.
This is why you're the best host in the city right here, because your enunciation.
Once upon a time. Elite. Not anymore.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I got one more.
Nick Sirianni tomorrow, and then Jeffrey Lurie at some point on Tuesday, but I think our show on Tuesday will probably come before Lurie. What?
Are we going to get like another Nick? Yeah, I said offense. Who would he say that about?
Johnny Munt. Johnny Munt, he's going to be a big part of the offense. Yeah, he's going to catch the ball. Yeah, I said as a receiver.
Yeah, I said vertical threat for Johnny Munt. I was thinking like
could be Hollywood Brown, could be Elijah Moore.
No, it's got to be it's got to be a player that we really view as a special teamer. JT Gray. Yeah, I said defense.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, be fine.
That's a good one.
I have one more big one. Do you have any?
Go ahead.
Okay. Jake Eliott. Howie Roseman gave Jake Eliott a vote of confidence, which is not surprising. Obviously they guaranteed his contract for next season, and also Howie wasn't going to come out and say like, yeah, he's really, really shaky last year. That was always to take us off the rails here. That was always like my former colleague Bob Ford, one of my favorite colleagues ever. For the record, I really admired him. He would always like come into a press conference and just be like, "Could you imagine if like Nick just went up there and was just like, yeah, I really have lost a lot of faith in the quarterback. I mean, you've seen him play. He's terrible." It's like, just like gives you like the quote of the century. Yeah. I used to always appreciate that. So, Howie wasn't going to do that with Jake Eliott. But I did find it interesting that he mentioned that it was like worst weather season that Philadelphia's ever had. It was just a cacophony of weather situations for Lincoln Financial Field. And that's why Jake Eliott had a down year.
It was very funny. I mean, the equivalent of like, God, how about that weather in Philadelphia, huh? It was very funny.
You guys know how the weather is.
It made sense in the moment, but thinking back and like, it was very funny that, his answer to is Jake Eliott going to have competition or is she just a kicker is, man, how about that weather?
Like the wind be blowing. I'm
going to be shopping.
Yeah, exactly.
Shopping.
Now, as a reporter, I will go and do my due diligence to see how the other kickers fared in the games that Jake Eliott struggled in.
Good idea.
I will do that, but it did just make me chuckle a little bit when he was like, "Man, like the weather last year was just so bad for him." But no, that was still noteworthy for me.
Just cleaning up the last final things. Asked about Landon Dickerson and the redoing of his contract. He really went overboard on the faith in Landon Dickerson that he's on like a historic pace of the amount of time, the Pro Bowls he's been to in his 4 or 5 seasons.
3 Pro Bowls in 5 seasons.
Effusive in his praise of Landon Dickerson.
Maybe that was messaging. Maybe he's trying to convince Landon Dickerson. Like, there's a legacy here for you. You
That's
know,
a good
like, look at the trajectory that you're on.
You could be a Hall of Famer. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then, he was asked about contract extensions for Jalen Hurts, Jalen Carter, the other guys on the defensive line, and essentially, I'm not going to talk about contract deals with guys we already have, but
yeah,
interesting a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think he was asked specifically about Jalen Carter, and I wish that we did have one of those questions, although I think the reason we didn't is because we know what the answer was going to be, which is that they don't talk about, contracts for players. But I do think that one is just, it's an interesting, you see Drew Rosenhaus kind of like buzzing around the Biltmore all day. Like, his presence is a real thing. And I would have liked, of all the questions we could have asked Howie with Truth Serum, obviously there are a couple that would take precedence, but I do think the Jalen Carter one is one of the more interesting ones. I would like to know, what he really thinks about that.
That's interesting. I feel like with Truth Serum, Jalen Carter would not be that high on my list.
Well, yeah, like from a big picture standpoint, but from like a news making standpoint, yeah, there's like 4 or 5 that come to mind over that. Some of which I probably wouldn't want to say on the show. But yeah, I think that there is, from like what's going to affect the Eagles in the short term, I think Jalen Carter's higher on that list.
All right, let's head to the super chats before we get out of here. From David Collins, turkeys on AJ being on the roster week 1, EJ.
So I've been around like 40% I've been around 60% that he's on the roster, like high 50s, low 60s. I don't think that Howie's answer today pushed me either way. I think it was, much of the same. I'm probably going to put it at 60 turkeys that he's on the roster.
Okay.
You're going to be lower than that.
Well, I got to stick by my 20 Elijah Moore.
You don't have to stick by that. Yeah, you don't have to do that.
I think my true answer right now is 54.
Okay.
Corey Cito, Duck Fook.
Shout out Corey.
And Corey Zito again. Ask PHNX if they're worried about Tommy Lloyd. Our buddy Saul, he's not going to like that question.
Shout out Saul.
Shout out to Saul.
Yeah,
maybe we'll see Saul tomorrow.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll be bopping around the studio. That's probably not the right adjective or the right verb there.
I don't think Saul's a bopper.
He's not a bopper. No. No, I don't know what he would be doing around the studio. Just patrolling the studio. Yeah, I think that fits for him. I think even he would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's about right.
Yeah. Okay. Overseeing the studio.
All right. Before we get going, we got a couple minutes left. What's your what would you like to ask Nick tomorrow? What can we preview for the people?
I want to hear what Nick has to say about the coaching staff that they've built around Jaelan, and now like the extension of like Andy Dalton built around Jaelan. It seems like there is a real priority
to the mix since we last spoke.
Yeah. There's been a real priority to get these like former quarterbacks, guys who can see things through the quarterback's lens around Jaelan. I want to hear what he has to say about that. Obviously some of the new offensive additions will be interesting. I do have one other note from the news around owners' meetings that I think we should at least mention, but we can do that in overtime. I can see how upset you are that I took that from you. I was trying to decide if owner's time was appropriate, and I didn't think you would like that.
When is it not owner's time?
Yeah, am I right? Yeah, I was listening to the Pablo Torre finds out about the NFLPA situation, and man, it just makes you feel so bad. And I don't even know who I feel bad for, because it's like the players would they're the ones that it's player apathy that has led to this, at least in part. So it's I feel bad for the players, but if they don't feel bad for themselves, then who am I to feel bad for them?
People in the NFLPA.
Yeah, that has to be frustrating. Yeah.
All right, go ahead. What's your nugget?
That Brown GM Andrew Berry said that Myles Garrett is not available in a trade. He said he's career Brown. He was basically poo-pooing the idea that the contract restructuring was done with the hope of trading him or making it easier to trade him. Now maybe you could say that's what he's got to say, but I mean he was more forceful about it than Howie Roseman was about AJ Brown today. So I did think that was noteworthy.
I think it would be kind of wild if a year after they sign that deal, they're going to trade Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I honestly you may disagree with me. I think they should trade him.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
I really think they should. I mean, it's not a coincidence that they put in the league rule proposal that teams can trade up to 5 years, trade 5 years worth of first round picks, which Howie Roseman did not want to discuss.
Did not want to answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. EJ live from Phoenix. We're going to be back tomorrow, 2:00 Eastern time. Most likely the same on Tuesday. Boots on the ground here at the Biltmore. Any whispers? Any news? We'll bring it to you. So check out our social media. Check out our YouTube channel, all that good stuff. We will have plenty of content coming your way over the next 48 hours. But for now, for EJ and the incomparable Lindsay, we thank you very much for watching and listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.